The afternoon sun caught the glass wind chime I'd hung on the back porch 30 years ago. Its gentle music had welcomed me home from double shifts at the hospital, had sung my son David to sleep through his childhood, had marked every season in this house. Now it played for Victoria, who'd decided the sound was tacky and wanted it gone. Gisella, we need to talk about your situation. Not Mom, not even Mrs. Brennan, just my first name, spoken like I was a tenant who'd fallen behind on rent. I looked up from the kitchen table where I'd been sorting through old photographs. Victoria stood in the doorway, perfectly manicured hand on her hip, her blonde hair swept into that severe bun she wore when she meant business. My situation? I kept my voice steady. David and I have been discussing it. She moved closer, her heels clicking on the tile floor I'd chosen after Thomas died. This house is really too much for you to maintain alone. At your age, you should be thinking about senior living, somewhere with activities and medical care on site. At my age, I was 62, not 90. I see, I said, though I didn't. Not yet. The house needs updating anyway. Victoria pulled out a chair but didn't sit, just rested her hand on the back of it. The kitchen is completely outdated. These cabinets. She wrinkled her nose. And honestly, having you here is awkward when we have guests over. They don't understand why David's mother is always around. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for months. I wasn't family occupying my own home. I was an embarrassment cluttering up their life. Where's David? I asked. At work. But he agrees with me. We've been looking at some lovely assisted living facilities. There's one in Clearwater with a beautiful lobby. I'd moved into this house with Thomas 33 years ago. David had taken his first steps in the living room. I'd planted every rose bush in the garden, had chosen every paint color, had held Thomas's hand in our bedroom as cancer took him 5 years ago. And now my daughter-in-law was describing senior living lobbies like I was supposed to be grateful. I'll think about it, I said quietly. Victoria's smile was sharp. Don't think too long. We're planning some renovations. That was 8 months ago. I should have acted then, but I'd told myself it was just talk, just Victoria being Victoria. David would never actually go along with it. I was wrong. They'd moved in 2 years ago, temporarily, after David's company relocated him back to Denver. Just until they found their own place, they'd said. Just until they got settled. I'd been lonely in the big house anyway, I'd told myself. It would be nice to have family around. The first few months were fine. David helped with yard work. Victoria cooked dinner twice a week. They paid for groceries. It felt like a fair arrangement. Then small things started changing. Victoria replaced my dish towels with new ones, threw out my old coffee maker and bought an expensive espresso machine I didn't know how to use, moved my collection of ceramic birds from the windowsill to a box in the garage because they didn't fit the aesthetic. It's fine, I told myself. She's just trying to help. When she started referring to it as our house in conversation with her friends, I said nothing. When she converted Thomas's study into her home office without asking, I bit my tongue. When she told me I couldn't have my book club over anymore because Tuesdays were her yoga night and the house needs to be peaceful, I canceled my 40-year-old book club. I had mistaken keeping the peace for maintaining my dignity. I had confused enabling with loving my son. The turning point came on a Thursday evening in March. I'd spent the day in the garden, planting the tomatoes I grew every year. Thomas and I used to make sauce together every August, and I'd kept the tradition alive. It was one of the few things I had left that was truly mine. I came inside, dirt under my nails, feeling good, useful, alive. Victoria was in the kitchen, on her phone, her voice tight with irritation. No, we can't host Easter this year, because David's mother is here. I know, it's awkward. We're working on it. There are some very nice facilities. She's resistant, but David's handling it. She saw me then. Didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. I'll call you back, she said into the phone, then turned to me. You're tracking dirt everywhere. Could you please use the side entrance when you're gardening? This is my house, I said. The words came out quiet but firm. Victoria laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. Gisella, let's be realistic. David is the head of this household. He's the one working, paying the bills. You're living here out of his generosity. I paid off this mortgage 20 years ago. That's not really relevant anymore. She turned back to her phone. Things change. Families evolve. You need to accept that. I went to my room, the smallest bedroom upstairs. Victoria had taken the master bedroom. You don't need all that space, she'd said. And the attached bathroom is perfect for my morning routine. I sat on the narrow bed and looked around. The room was bare except for a few photographs on the dresser. Most of my belongings were in the basement now. Decluttering, Victoria called it, making the house show-ready for when we eventually list it. That's when I understood. They weren't planning to find their own place. They were planning to sell my house and move me into senior living. I opened my laptop and started searching for lawyers. The next morning, I called Margaret Hoffman, an attorney I'd known from my nursing days. Her mother had been on my floor for months before she passed, and we'd stayed in touch. "Margaret," I said when she answered, "I need help." I laid it out for her, everything. The gradual takeover, the conversations about senior living, Victoria's comment about the house being David's. "Do you have the deed?" Margaret asked. "Yes, it's in my name. Has been since Thomas died. He made sure of that." "Then we have options. Have they contributed financially to the household?" "They buy groceries sometimes, but they don't pay rent or utilities. I do." "Good. That makes things clearer." "Gisella, legally, they're guests in your home. You have every right to ask them to leave. David is my son." "I know." Her voice was gentle. "But that doesn't mean he gets to take your home." We talked for an hour. Margaret explained my rights, my options. She drafted a formal notice to vacate. 30 days, legally binding. "Are you sure?" she asked before we finalized anything. "This will cause family conflict." I thought about the wind chime Victoria wanted gone, the book club I'd canceled, Thomas's study turned into an office, my photographs in boxes, my life being erased one decision at a time. "I'm sure," I said. I printed the notices that afternoon. 2 copies, formal and legal. I put them in envelopes and set them on the kitchen table. One addressed to David, one to Victoria. Then I waited. David came home first, around 6. He kissed me on the cheek absently, already scrolling through his phone. "There's an envelope for you on the table," I said. He barely glanced at it. "What is it?" "Open it." Victoria arrived 10 minutes later, carrying shopping bags. She saw her envelope and picked it up, curious. "What's this?" I watched them both read, watched David's face go pale, watched Victoria's jaw tighten. "Mom, is this a joke?" David's voice cracked. 30 days notice to vacate? Victoria threw the paper down. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." "We live here." Victoria's voice rose. "This is our home." "No," I said calmly. "This is my home. Your guests who overstayed their welcome." David was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "Mom, we can talk about this. If you're upset about something." "I'm upset about a lot of things, David. I'm upset that your wife refers to me as awkward when you have guests. I'm upset that I can't have my book club in my own house. I'm upset that you've let her treat me like a burden instead of your mother. That's not fair," he said weakly. "You're right. It's not fair. None of this has been fair." Victoria was pacing now, her face red. "This is insane. We can't just find a place in 30 days. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve." "David, are you hearing this? Your mother is throwing us out." "I'm exercising my legal right to determine who lives in my home." "Your home?" "David pays the utilities." "Because I allow him to contribute. The deed is in my name. The house is paid off. I owe you nothing." Victoria turned to David, expecting him to argue, to fight. But he was just standing there, the notice trembling in his hand. "You can't do this," Victoria said, but there was less certainty in her voice now. "I can. I have. You have 30 days. The days that followed were cold. David barely spoke to me. Victoria moved through the house like a ghost, slamming doors, making pointed comments. "Can't believe my own mother is making us homeless," David muttered one morning. "You're not homeless. You're adults who need to find your own place to live. After everything we've done for you." "What have you done for me, David?" I interrupted. "Tell me. Specifically." He couldn't answer. Victoria tried a different approach, crying, apologizing. "I didn't mean those things, Gisella. I was stressed. We can work this out. The notice stands." She turned bitter then, started calling me names when she thought I couldn't hear, told her friends I was senile, confused, being manipulated by lawyers. But I'd stopped caring what Victoria thought. I'd stopped shrinking myself to fit into their version of who I should be. I spent those 30 days reclaiming my space. I brought my ceramic birds back to the windowsill. I moved my things back into the master bedroom. I invited my book club over, and we laughed in the living room until midnight. Margaret called to check on me twice a week. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I have in 2 years." On day 28, I came downstairs to find David packing boxes in the living room. His face was hard. "Found a place," he said shortly. "Small apartment in Aurora. It's what we can afford on short notice." "That's good." "Is it?" He looked up at me then, and I saw it. Not anger, shame. He knew. On some level, he knew what they'd done. "David, don't, Mom. Just don't." Victoria didn't say goodbye. She loaded her car in silence, shooting me looks of pure hatred. When she drove away, she didn't look back. David lingered, stood by his car, keys in hand, staring at the house. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," he said finally. "I didn't think I'd have to. She's my wife, and I'm your mother. You chose poorly." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Maybe not, but it's true." He got in his car, paused before starting the engine. "Will you? Can I still call you?" "Of course. You're my son. I love you. But I won't be disrespected in my own home. Not by anyone." He drove away without another word. The house felt enormous that first night. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the pieces of my life I'd reclaimed. The wind chimes sang on the porch. My photographs were back on the mantel. Thomas's study was a study again, his books on the shelves, his reading chair by the window. I made myself dinner, just for me, ate it at the kitchen table with a book propped open. No one complained about my choice of meal. No one made comments about my reading light being too bright. It was quiet, but it was my quiet. Margaret called that evening. "I heard they moved out." "They did. How do you feel?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "Lighter," I said, finally. "Like I can breathe again." "That's good, Gisella. That's really good." The weeks that followed were an adjustment. The house was too big sometimes, too quiet. I missed David, the son he used to be before Victoria, before he'd learned to see me as a burden instead of a person. But I didn't miss the walking on eggshells, the constant monitoring of what I said, what I did, where I existed in my own home, the slow erasure of myself. My book club came back. I planted a full garden. I repainted the kitchen, the color I'd always wanted. I hung new photographs and kept the wind chime and played music too loud sometimes just because I could. David called 3 weeks after he moved out. "Mom?" "Hi, sweetheart." Silence on the line. Then, "Victoria and I are. We're having problems." "I'm sorry to hear that." "She's angry, says you ruined everything. But I keep thinking, maybe you were right." I didn't say anything. "Let him work through it. I let her walk all over you. I saw it happening, and I didn't stop it. I was a coward. You were caught in the middle." "That's no excuse." His voice broke. "You're my mom. I should have protected you." "Yes," I said gently. "You should have." "Can I? Would it be okay if I came by sometime?" "Just me. For coffee." I looked around my kitchen, my home, my space that was fully mine again. I'd like that. He came by that Saturday, sat at the table where he'd done homework as a kid, drank coffee from the mugs I'd used for decades. "The house looks different," he said. "It looks like mine." He nodded slowly. "It does. I'd forgotten. I'd forgotten that it was yours first." We talked for 2 hours. Really talked, the way we hadn't in years. He apologized. I accepted. We didn't solve everything. Couldn't put the broken pieces back together exactly as they'd been, but it was a start. When he left, he hugged me tight. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not letting me become the kind of man who abandons his mother." I watched him drive away, then went back inside. The wind chimes sang. The house settled around me, familiar and mine. I had spent 2 years shrinking, accommodating, pretending I didn't matter in my own life. 2 years of watching my space, my dignity, my very existence be negotiated away piece by piece. But I'd taken it back, all of it. The house was mine. The life was mine. The choices were mine, and I was never giving that away again.